by means of cultural dimension, certainly the shareholders' concentration is a unique phenomenon in Hong Kong when comparing to elsewhere, to the extent that we cannot simply neglect the beauty of having a family a control firm. The beauty of having a major family controlling a firm is the fact that, don't forget, they will be the last one to get out. So therefore, they will be taking the full care of the companies in the very long run. And also, the family control firm, they have the beauty of instilling the family culture and also entrepreneurship into the company, to the extent that probably professional manager, they simply lack of. So therefore, we have to, while we are benchmarking Hong Kong's governance system with those global trends, on the one hand, we have to factor in the beauty of the local culture as well.
I don't think Hong Kong will resist Sarbanes-Oxley because a good corporate governance rules is something it should be preventive. It should be proactive. So if all the firms in Hong Kong are following all these, even the current corporate governance code well, I believe that scandals like the Enron, the WorldCom of the world, should not happen. And if that is the case, I don't think we need to go to that extreme of Sarbanes-Oxley, because my personal view is Sarbanes-Oxley is a bit over the top, is a bit extreme. I think that my own view is even the Sarbanes-Oxley, the actual implementation of some of its rulings will actually taken back over the next 2-3 years, because a lot of things being mentioned in the law there wasn't actually too practical. So I guess but we will have to see how the whole capital market and the various public listed companies are doing over the next few years. My own sense is the current measures are probably quite enough for the next 2 to 3 years. The key issue and question is making sure that all these rules will be implemented and executed well.
In many ways, we already have a Sarbanes-Oxley Act because the new stock exchange regulations require the directors to look at control in not a too different way from the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So I think these things are already coming in our direction. But I also think there's a need for a period of consolidation here. I think there's been an awful lot of change, and it needs to be absorbed into practice.
The message here seems to be that more is not necessarily better when it comes to corporate governance regulation. Hong Kong has always prided itself in the past on its minimalist approach to regulation, though the past 5 years has seen an unprecedented surge in new corporate governance rules. So, have we gone too far? Is there a need for a period of consolidation, a breathing space to give companies the opportunity to adapt to these new rules? If the current pace of reform is maintained, is there a danger that companies will start to suffer from governance overload? Will companies start to avoid the stock market altogether, preferring to seek funds from small groups of sophisticated institutional and private investors? Let's hear what our guests have to say.
My main concern is corporate governance fatigue. Right? There's been so much written about governance, there's been so much talked about governance. You pick up a paper, you pick up a magazine, people are talking about governance. And that's where one of the problems, I think, problem areas will be, right? Because of this constant hammering of governance, 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 people may just get tired.
Well, I think we've made some significant strides forward in setting new rules and policies in the area of corporate governance. It's quite clear to me that there needs to be a period of bedding down those requirements for companies really to engage in getting to grips with the issues and demonstrate some progress in introducing new measures. If we look at other jurisdictions that have taken, admittedly at an earlier stage, a similar approach in dealing with corporate governance, the progress of reform is measured in years rather than months. And one of the things that I would say in a Hong Kong context is we shouldn't have expectations that overnight a lot of these changes are going to be introduced and be sustained. We should be looking on a 3 or a 5 year basis to see that these things have settled down and that have been sustained changes in the way in which companies address some of the problem issues of the past.
I frequently get comments from people that we've had a surfeit of changes to the law, changes to the regulations, corporate governance code, and it's a time to stop and consolidate. And I do have a certain amount of sympathy with this view, but at the same time, corporate governance standards do not stand still. They're always changing and evolving. And as I said earlier on, if Hong Kong is to maintain its position and reputation as a major international financial and business centre, we do have to keep track of and, where appropriate, adopt the best corporate governance practices and standards. So while we certainly do need to consolidate, we cannot stand still. And we do need to change and adapt where appropriate.
To some extent, I think there is a need for timeout. There is new code has come in. The new code is quite extensive. There's the expectation to report on internal controls and look at internal controls is another area. And there is a need for regulators to leave things alone. It's assuming we don't have some horrible scandal which shows that we missed something. But hopefully we haven't, because we've looked to what other people have put together and hopefully brought together the key elements. And there is a time for the regulations not to change, but I don't think that means that there will not be a strong emphasis on this. I think it's to see how people start to react to the codes, how people start to report, how people start to put in place some quite new things. I think for some people it will be new thinking, and what we do need to do, 2005-06, is to look back. There will be lessons, and from the lessons, people may say, well, do we need to tweak something? Hopefully, it will just be tweaking. And see how it goes. There are certain elements of the governance area. I mean, as an accountant, I'm interested in accounting standards, where we know that there are quite a lot of areas where the international accounting people believe they need to address issues. So that's one area which I think one will continue to see changes. But in the broad structure of what we have chosen, which is a code which has a set of expectations, and people are asked to comply with or explain the extent that why they're departing from those. I think that broad structure will remain the same.
There have been a lot of rules, there's been a lot of discussion of corporate governance, and there's no doubt a bit of fatigue about the subject, and I can see why many companies and even perhaps some regulators might say, well, we've had enough and let's consolidate. But I think you need to see corporate governance as an ongoing process of refinement and improvement, in the same way that companies are constantly striving to improve their efficiencies, find new markets, find new customers, create new technologies. I think corporate governance is a similar process of ongoing change and reform. I don't think anyone can ever say when enough is enough. It also depends on what sort of market Hong Kong wants to be. I mean, we may feel that we've hadn't got enough rules in place right now, but if in another 2 or 3 years we have a major scandal or a series of scandals, then we'll look back and we'll say, well, we didn't have enough. We should have done more.